Hello there. Me, Ben Avery, and I am here because I'm actually running a test run on some software things for a special live broadcast I'm going to do tonight. And I figured if I'm going to do this, I might as well, get some content out of this. And I've been wanting to do this video for a while anyway. And so, what better way to do this than to just go ahead and do it live in front of everyone without any kind of practice. So hopefully this is working. If it's not working, then I've got some friends who I think are going to be able to let me know what they're seeing and what they are hearing. But for right now, I just wanted to. Well, like I said, use this to make some content. I want to make a video about this, and I've been wanting to make a video about this for about a month. And this book that I want to talk about here is one of those that will go into the series for is it worth reading. Now the way that this book came about, that I it came into my hands I should say, is because of my new podcast that I've been doing called Up from the Ashes, which takes a look at the old sci-fi series, the Star Lost, which is not great show, but at the same time there is definitely some heart behind that show, and there was a lot of people who worked really hard to make that show, and they tried. They really did. And yeah, so the reason that I got this book though that I'm about to talk about is because the show is about a spaceship out in the middle of space headed towards a star. They're headed towards disaster. And the spaceship is built up of 37 different domes, and each dome is a different people group that have their own culture that's developed over the last few hundred years after an accident caused all the domes to lose contact with each other. And the main characters come from a dome called Cypress Corners, which is basically an Amish or Mennonite style society. And a couple of the characters realize we're on a spaceship. This is not a planet. And actually, they don't even say that because they don't even know what a planet is. But they realize they're on a spaceship. They realize what's going on. They realize there's lots and lots of problems that are behind where they are and what they're doing. And so they leave their dome to go and travel the ship and discover other domes. And they're discovering technology for the first time. And yeah. So as I'm watching this and I'm getting ready to do that podcast, I mentioned on a Facebook group about this podcast, and someone made a comment on my Facebook post. And the someone who made the comment was a part of that Facebook group, and his name was Kerry Nietz. And I saw his name, and I was like, that name's familiar. And so I clicked on his name, and I see, oh yeah, I believe I interviewed him 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 years ago for a Christian magazine about fiction. I think it was Clean Fiction. I can't remember the name of the magazine. It's been a very long time. But I did the comics and graphic novels thing, and I believe that I interviewed him and did a feature on him for a book that he had back then. But I might be wrong about that, and this is live, so I can't edit this out if I am wrong. But right or wrong, that's what I'm going with. Uh, and so when I clicked on his name, though, I realized not only did I recognize what I thought maybe I wrote about for that magazine, but I recognized the book I'm holding in my hands right now, Amish Vampires in Space. And I thought to myself, well, he'd be a great co-host to have on there, a great guest host. And that's the way I run that podcast. Up from the Ashes has different guest hosts every week. And so it's me and a guest host, and we're talking about an episode of that TV show. And so once I, connected his name to that show, he had never heard of the show. He had never seen it before. It's a really fun episode that we recorded. It's on upfromtheashes.com. You can find it on the feed wherever you find your podcast. But I thought I got to get this guy to be a guest host. And if I'm going to get this guy to be a guest host, I should probably read his book. So I did. And initially I was a little bit nervous. I shouldn't say nervous. Nervous is not quite the right word for reading the book. I was trepidatious. Also not quite the right word. But years ago when the book first came out, I went to a writing conference and I was talking to a friend, and he said, "Have you heard about this book, Amish Vampires in Space?" Which I think I might have at the time because it was getting some press. And he just talked a little bit about how he really wasn't so sure about it, and he was afraid that it was going to, be making fun of the Amish, or just putting them in a bad light. And you know there are positives and negatives about the Amish culture. I'm not going to get into that here on this video. I do live in the heart of Amish territory in Indiana, anyway. I live near Shipshewana, if you've heard of that. If you're in Indiana or Michigan, you might have heard of Shipshewana. But anyway, I'm aware of the Amish, and I also, I'm aware of them as they're people. They're not a punchline. They're not a joke. They get used as a punchline. They get used as a joke, but they are people. And I've interacted with some of them, and I actually have had some of them come in and help us with some volunteer stuff with our kids at church. And so you know, over time, then I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm just going to not bother with it. It's goofy probably, and I'm not going to bother with it. But then the post, and I'm thinking, okay, well, you know what? Maybe I should give this a look see. So I did, and I looked at some of the reviews, and the reviews kind of put my not quite fears at ease. And so I went ahead and got it. I went ahead and read it. And I have to say, as I ask the question, is it worth reading? The answer is yes, it is. I was surprised how good this book was. Now, it starts out with an introduction saying this is not a joke. The initial idea, which was not from Kerry Nietz, was a little bit of a joke, and they were riffing on how back then all Christian fiction seemed to be Amish romances, and all secular fiction seemed to be vampires. And so, it's the chocolate and the peanut butter kind of a thing. But he got to thinking about the concept from that joke as they were talking about, just publishing trends and that sort of thing. He got thinking about the concept and thought, I want to do this for real. So he asked the guy who made some sort of mock-up cover, to make the joke. He said, can I take that and can I run with that? And he was given the go-ahead, and he did. He took it, and he ran with it, and I'm really glad that he did. I haven't read the 2 sequels yet, but I'm very excited to read the 2 sequels. And I'll also say this. When I talked about Flight of the Angels and Hornet's Nest, I talked about if you give a Ben or give a mouse a cookie, if you give a Ben a good book, he's going to want another. And I call it if you give a mouse a cookie syndrome. The syndrome is a little bit here, but this book stands alone, and there is not a cliffhanger at the end. It is not just pointing you to the next book. There are definitely crumbs dropped for you as you're reading this, and if you say to yourself, boy, I'd like to get more, there's crumbs that say, hey, there is more, and I can also say, the other 2 books have already been published, so they're out there. But it does not suffer from if you give a mouse a cookie syndrome as bad as some other books that I've read that I like do. Now, it's a bad syndrome in the sense that it just means it goes against your need for immediate gratification. And so that need for immediate gratification, where if you read a good book and you really want the follow-up right away, well, sometimes you have to wait a long time. Well, you don't have to for this because they're already out there. So anyway, getting into the book itself, I have my 4 quadrants that I often talk about: style, plot, characters, and theme. And then there's also fun. And I'll just start with fun. I had a lot of fun reading this, and it's because of the style, the plot, the characters, and the theme. But it's also because of things that it kind of riffs on. And just to jump into it right now, the Dracula, it owes a lot to Dracula, and it's very much riffing on the Dracula the Dracula formula, let's say, in that it has, the master vampire, and it has the the minions, and but then it kind of owes itself a little bit to Alien or Aliens, in the sense that this thing is spreading. When I say this thing, vampirism is spreading, and when you become a vampire, you become a monster, not the unthinking kind of a monster, but a thinking monster who has all the human capabilities of thought and everything. And so, and they're all trapped on a ship, so you have that claustrophobic kind of sense where there's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to go, and the ship is heading towards a station, and there's disaster there if the ship gets there and carries this with it. And so it just has all of these elements that kind of dive into the horror that I like with Alien, and with concepts like that, and with Dracula, and with the vampire concept. But he plays the vampire stuff straight, and he plays the sci-fi horror stuff straight. It is a science fiction novel. It's got spaceships. It's got there's a planet where the Amish live, and you might be asking yourself, okay, so how do the Amish get there? Well, the Amish get to the planet the same way that the Amish here in my area get to the hospital, and that's someone else drives them, and it's okay. Like the way it works and the way that the kind of the two cultures come together in real life and in this book, it feels very realistic, and where they say, well, we'll allow ourselves to go on this vehicle. We won't own the vehicle, but we will allow you to carry us, and it's okay because we're not doing the driving. But anyway, the setup for the book is very simple. There's a planet, and this planet has been settled by a group of Amish. And the reason that they have the Amish settling on this planet is because who better to be resourceful in a place where you don't have a lot of natural resources to use to create technology. And so they're able to settle on this planet in a way that no one else would have been able to, because they're able to use the land in a way that they've been doing for generations. But anyway, that's all for naught, because there's a possible disaster. The sun might be exploding very, very soon. And if it does, it's taking the planet out and everyone on it with them. And so they need to leave. And so a signal gets sent out into space. Someone answers the signal, and the people that answer the signal are in a spaceship. Unfortunately, they're in a spaceship that has a vampire on it. And I'm not going to get into all the details there. I don't want to spoil too much, but that's the essential setup, is that they are escaping a planet, and they can't go back to the planet because death lies there, but they're also trapped on a spaceship, and death is waiting for them on the spaceship as well. And so that's the basic plot. But like I said, it kind of plot wise gets into those ideas of, running around the ship, trying to stay alive. There's the survival horror aspect to it as well. And it's just, I enjoyed that. The characters, they're unlikable when they need to be unlikable. They are understandable when they need to be understandable, in the sense that you kind of understand, why are they making these bad choices? Why are they doing these things that put others in harm's way? Or why are they choosing sacrifice, or whatever it might be? You understand the motivations of the characters. But the most important thing to me is you care about what happens to the characters. You want the characters to survive. And so, like what often happens in horror movies, there are characters you want to survive, and when they don't, you feel bad. And there are characters you don't want to survive, and when they don't, you cheer. I wouldn't say there's a lot of cheering going on here, but there are some characters who are bad people, and you're like, okay, I really don't want them to make it through this. I mean, they deserve what they got coming to them. But that's just that, again, that horror trope where not everyone, you can't have a tragedy with every single death as far as a character you've really connected to. But there is still tragedy with every single death, and there is tragedy with everyone who gets infected by the vampires. So you care about what's happened to them, and there's not a whole lot of that trope of unlikable characters have bad things happen to them to make you cheer. Bad things do happen to the bad guys, but that's because that's a part of your climax, and yeah. So we'll not talk about that anymore, because I want to talk about the style. The style of the book is very readable. It's very enjoyable. And like I said, it owes a lot to vampire literature. It owes a lot to science fiction horror. And it just, I mean, going back to that science fiction horror, this is a book about, and tell me if you've heard this before, this is a book about people in space doing corporate things without concern for the consequences for normal people who end up paying the price. You've heard that kind of thing before. It's, there's nothing new under the sun. It's what you do with it. And what does he do with it? He creates a compelling novel with interesting things and some new things as well. Not just putting Amish people on a spaceship, but new things in just, okay, so how does the vampirism work? There's a science fiction explanation for what happens with vampirism, and the vampirism looks like the vampirism we're familiar with. And the other thing that I do appreciate is they recognize it here too. A lot of times you watch something and it's a vampire thing or a zombie thing, and they're like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? As if they've never heard of a vampire or never heard of a zombie. So yeah, so that's my kind of review with those quadrants. But like I said, the fun one, the fifth one, is fun. And I had a lot of fun with this. So yeah. I don't know if my friend ever read this book. I don't know if he ever had an actual reaction to the actual book beyond his feelings of the concept of the book. But this book is infamous because it did get mentioned on late night television, with late night television comedians talking about the book and should you get this book or not, that kind of thing. But my reaction is pleasant surprise. I was very surprised just how much I ended up liking it. I won't say that I'm disappointed I waited so long to read it because I just appreciated it now, and it was the timing was just about perfect. If all the timing wouldn't have worked out, I wouldn't have gotten a chance to have Kerry Nietz come on Up from the Ashes. I do hope to have him come on Strangers and Aliens at some point because he has other books beyond this. But yeah, so Amish Vampires in Space. Is it worth reading? The answer is emphatically yes. So until next time, and by next time for broad or live streaming, I should say, that means actually tonight. I don't have a time yet, but I will be posting some things on different Facebook pages and a lot of the people who are involved in the project. And there are a lot of people involved in that project. They will also, I'm sure, be telling people to watch for the cover reveal video we're going to do tonight. So until next time, which might be tonight for you, or it might be in a couple weeks. I don't know. I mean, it's been a very interesting few weeks trying to figure out how to navigate website things and book things and different things like that. And so that does mean the podcasting has kind of suffered a little bit and there hasn't been a lot of Strangers and Aliens content. But that's another reason why I thought, hey, why not take the opportunity to talk about this and get an episode out? So until next time, whether it's tonight, in 2 weeks, I want to wish you Godspeed.